screen. Excellent. Well, as usual, this will be short and sweet, so we're not spending too much time in lecture mode. Everybody should have GCP credit. If you don't have GCP credit, please let me know. I have enough credit that every student should have at least one code. You all should be on GCP anyway for this class, just because it's easier to run a lot of the stuff, especially later down the line when we get into working on the finals. So if you don't have a GCP code from me, please let me know sooner than later. Or have any trouble getting on Discord or anything like that. So with that, let's just jump into our short lecture for the week. While this is not a computer repair class, knowledge of computers and the various types of cables and connections matters. If you are the digital forensics investigator for a company, then you could theoretically have one of everything that the company has. So for example, if the company uses nothing but SATA drives, then you don't need to have SCSI cables or SAS cables. If your organization is using nothing but solid-state drives, you could have nothing but solid-state drives. If you are a consultant, then things get a little tougher because you have to have a cable for every possible scenario that you may encounter. So the amount of hardware that you need to have at your disposal depends on the situation you're working in. If it's a place you know, it's a place that you can work with IT closely, especially if it's an internal thing, it's so much easier because you can get the inventory list of everything that's there and only get the things that exist in the company, so you don't have to go out and buy like floppy drives because your company doesn't have floppy drives. Or if it's an entire Mac shop, you don't have to get a different kind of machine. This is a small computer systems interface cable. The short for it is SCSI. It's been used for hard drives, tape drives, scanners, CD drives. SCSI devices can be connected into a chain. Again, if you're working with older systems, you may run into a SCSI cable and a SCSI drive. So you'll need the controller to be able to talk to it to get an image off of it and then use it in the various tools. This one, the Integrated Drive Electronics, or IDE. It came a little after SCSI. It's used for hard drives, tapes, and optical drives. The disk and drive controller are built into the drive themselves, which facilitates communication between the CPU and the drive. The initial version was called the Advanced Technology Attachment with Packet Interface, and then also has been referred to as Parallel ATA. That is the type of cable that fits into this kind of drive. With SCSI, there are, if I remember right, there's like 40 pins. and they're all used. With IDE, there's one that isn't being used, right in the middle. So it tells you which way the cable goes. The advancement to these guys that we see is the serial ATA. Connects devices to host bus adapters. Provides much higher data transfer than the previous interfaces. It's also the most common right now, regardless of machine. You may also run into the external SATA, which all function the same way. But being able to identify the port on the back of a computer or the port on a laptop and go, oh, that's an eSATA, that's a SATA, is definitely important. You don't have to know all the various speeds and know all that like the back of your hand, because this is not an A+ class. But being able to identify the ports and be able to identify what goes where is definitely important, especially when we're looking at a computer, we're taking pictures for photographic evidence, and we're detailing what's connected to where. We have to be able to properly say what connections were being used at the time that the computer was seized. There are two processes used by examiners to make bit-for-bit copies. There is the clone, which is an exact copy of a hard drive and be used as backup, and an image, a file or group of files that contain bit-for-bit copies of a hard drive but cannot be used for booting or other operations. Of the two, cloning a drive is faster than imaging, making cloning more practical. This does mean that you need to have the exact disk we're talking about. This is where working internally versus externally comes into play. If the company bought a bunch of Dells with a specific version across the entire organization, then it's easy to get a few extra, and now you'll have an exact copy, including the drive that was used in all those systems. So cloning becomes much easier and becomes much more exact, because that's what you really want. You want to make an exact copy. Using different types of disks may lead to some problems when it comes to bringing the case to court. Because that's the whole point, is having a perfect image that is sound, that is forensically sound, and holds up in court. Imaging is useful for what we're doing, for investigations. So if you're cloning a disk, that the destination disk should be properly sanitized. It again should be as close to as possible, if not the same type of make and model, since manufacturers do make disks differently. But yeah, cloning a drive would be great for a backup, but imaging is much more useful for the things we're going to do. So for example, when you start working on the cases, you're going to work with images. You're not going to work with a clone, because there's no way I'm going to ship out, we have 14 people here, so 13 identical drives with data. It's easier to have you download an image that is still a copy of the disk that was imaged. It's just not a physical disk where I could hand to you. And both are accepted in court. Solid state drives. are kind of a problem to us, actually. Even though, yes, they are more efficient, given their use of power, their faster retrieval and storage of files. They can stand heat and vibration much better than a spinning disk. Recovering deleted files on an SSD is much more challenging because of a feature of SSDs called garbage collection, which is a memory management process that removes unused files to make more memory available. Garbage collection is unpredictable with solid-state drives, which means if you took two hashes of the same SSD, they may not match. And that's a problem, because we need them to match. We need them to match every time. Unlike hard disk drives, solid-state drives have to erase data before a write can occur. And it's completed in large blocks with high latency. The operating system doesn't keep track of the physical locations of the files. That's left to something called the file translation layer, who maps the logical block addresses to physical block addresses. Trim is an operating system function that informs a solid-state drive which blocks are no longer in use, increasing the write performance. Trim will run immediately after the recycle bin is emptied. There are techniques that have been developed to prevent trim and garbage collection from operating, and though the hashing issue does exist, what we know from case law is that the evidence is still admissible. It does make life a little harder, though, because you're going to want to verify that even though the hashes are different, everything else is the same. But hey, that's the nature of a solid-state drive. And they are not going anywhere. Random access memory is the most volatile of all the different types of memory. It's erased when a computer is powered off. While the computer is on, RAM can provide a treasure trove of information, from internet searches to websites visited to passwords in clear text, to cookie sessions, to all kinds of good information that can be used in a case. When launching an investigation on a system, you really don't want to turn it off. You want to be able to use tools like volatility to grab what's in memory. RAID. Not the thing you kill bugs with. The redundant array of independent disks. When two or more disks are used in conjunction with one another to provide increased performance and reliability through redundancy. Reliability in RAID refers to the fault tolerance, meaning if one component fails, the system continues to operate. An operating system will view RAID arrays as one logical disk with the use of hardware or software controllers. It is always important to physically note the order in which the drives were added to the RAID and which drives are connected to what part of the adapter. If you are investigating a RAID array and you want to pull out the drives to investigate them, you want to make sure everything is in order, because RAID arrays can get weird if you don't put them back in the proper order. And you want to keep all the data intact. You don't want to troubleshoot a RAID array, especially if time is against you. Quick question: does anyone not know the different types of arrays you can make? Yeah, so a RAID 0 is called the stripe. It just means all these will work as one, but we're just going to use the full amount of the drives as one without any backup. So if these 5 drives are all 1 terabyte, a RAID 0 array would mean that the logical drive is 5 terabytes big. It also means if drive 3 dies, then everything that was in drive 3 goes with it. There's no backup. We just get to use the full length and breadth of all of the drives. Sometimes that's useful. Like, it is faster, but you risk losing data. RAID 1 is called a mirror. So that could take 2 drives, you could have 4 drives. Half of the drives being used will be what you can write and read onto. The other 2 are an exact copy of the first 2. So if data is lost, then it's okay, because we have an exact copy. RAID 10 is the combination of 0 and 1. So not only can we use 2 or more drives, but we're also mirroring them at the same time. You don't take advantage of the 4 in regards to space, but you do have the security of having not only more room, but also an exact copy. RAID 5 and 6 are similar to each other. You can take, for example, RAID 5, you can take 5 drives like these, and you'll lose like 33% of each, but if any one drive dies, the data still exists, and when you replace the dead drive, the other 4 can recover and rebuild the new drive, and life goes back to normal. With RAID 6, you could lose 2 drives and still have all your data intact and be able to recreate your array. And then from there it just goes crazy, because there's like RAID 50s and 60s and all kinds of other ways you can combine disks together. No. 0, 1, 5, 6, 10, 50, and 60 are the ones that I've seen. 50 and 60 kind of are harder for me to understand, because not only are you striping, but you're also taking a piece of each. And I think if you lose one in a stripe, then you lose that portion, but that's the whole point of the 5 or the 6 and the 50-60. I don't know. It gets weird after that. But at that point, we're talking about a large number of drives together. We're no longer talking about 5 or 6. Okay, without cheating, do you know what this is? Not that I can tell if you're cheating or not. But yes, this is FireWire. It was a competitor to USB 2.0. Obviously, we know who won. It was actually replaced by Thunderbolt, which we see tied with USB 3. As noted in the previous chapter, each time a device is connected to a computer, information about that device is recorded, for example, in Windows Registry. And that's the location where it is. You look in HKey local machine, under system, then the current control set, the enum folder, storage volume, and you'll see all the IDs of all devices, of all USB devices in this case, that have connected to that computer in the time that the operating system was installed. A great note to have when doing investigations on a system and having to draw a timeline of when a USB drive was connected or how many times it was connected. Speaking of external hard drives, there are the USB powered and the externally powered drives. Within the casing tends to be a SATA drive. Once it is out of the casing, it's possible to clone the drive. External drives are mostly used for backup or extension of a computer's memory. So an examiner like yourself should be aware of its use, especially if it's using something like BitLocker. Think and check before you remove any USB device that is connected to a live system. Because if it's using some form of encryption, it's probably going to be unlocked when the operating system is running, giving you the perfect chance to take an image of the drive when it's unencrypted and open. But the moment you unplug it, if it's encrypted, then you may lose that access, and now you're just going to sit with an encrypted drive. These next set of pictures, again, only matter if you are working as a consultant or you're working for a firm that does digital forensics and you have every device known to man in stock. Have you seen this? I have never seen this in real life. I know it exists. It's a multimedia card. Who was replaced by this guy. The Secure Digital, or SD card. There are indeed different versions of them. There's the SDHC, the Secure Digital High Capacity card. There's also the Secure Digital Extended Capacity, or SDXC card. Most of them are formatted by default in FAT32. Here's another one that you may have seen sometimes in cameras or in routers, like Cisco routers. They tend to use this. They use compact flash. I used to consult for a company whose entire phone system was living off of a single compact flash card that they never had backed up. So of course it died, and they had to buy another compact flash and recreate their entire phone system, voicemail settings, extensions, all that. Anyone seen this guy? This is a memory stick, and it is proprietary to Sony. Something that you need to keep in mind. This is not an SD card. An SD card is different. It's more universal. A memory stick is specifically proprietary Sony. How different are they? Well, they are different shape. They have different internals. They function the same way, but it is proprietary Sony, which means you need a Sony device to read it. There are devices that can help you read it. But yeah, in its functionality, it's just another SD card. But this isn't the first time that Sony went their own way. Here's another that you may have seen, may not have ever seen. These were called the Extreme Digital cards. These have also been phased out in favor of SD cards. Regardless of the type of card you have, again, if we're a shop whose clientele is companies and organizations who need somebody to do their forensic investigations, you need to have a device like this, for example, that you can insert an SD card, you can insert an XD, a Sony card, a compact flash, and be able to read it without altering the device itself. So what something like this does is you can connect a SD card and be able to read the contents, and the blocker prevents any write operation from reaching the physical card. So you are able to get a fully sound copy of that card without any alteration. since we are talking about removable media, optical disks is also part of that list. These polycarbonate plastic disks have one or more metallic layers. Data is stored and read using a laser, reaching between 500 and 700 degrees Celsius, causing the metal alloy to liquefy at certain points. The lands are the reflective surfaces on a disk. The pits are the less reflective surfaces that haven't been burned by a laser. The differences between the reflective and less reflective surfaces can be translated into binary. CDR are forensically sound since they can be written to only once. Their general storage is 700 megabytes. The ISO 9960, also known as CDFS, is the standard for optical disks and their file systems. An image of said disk is a .iso file. And then a little side note, a standard frame consists of 24 bytes and are the smallest unit of memory on a CD-ROM. A sector has 98 frames, or 2,000 and some change bytes. There's a question from Robbie. Is the operating system stored on the disk? Yes. How is operating system license handled when a disk is cloned? It is a complete copy of everything that's on it, so the license is also copied. Now for a clone, it works out. So let's say you have your home computer, and you make a clone of the disk with another disk that you bought at like Central Computers or Amazon or wherever. If the primary disk that you have on your system dies, you could just take that drive out, replace it with the one you cloned to, and life continues. The license will continue, everything works just fine because it's an exact copy. For an image, we don't really care about that because we're not booting the drive. When we work with images, we're looking at the contents of the disk, so we're looking at a layer lower than just the operating system. But yeah, cloning is great for backup. Like your home computer, making an exact copy of everything that's on it. Should the drive die, or when the drive dies, you stick in the new drive, life moves on. With image, we go deeper than that. CDRW. A compact disc rewritable. Tends to have less storage than your other CDs. In any disc, we have the tracks, similar to the spinning disc, a group of sectors that are written at one time. A session is a group of tracks recorded at the same time. There's a table of contents that records the location of the start address, the session number, and track information on a disk. If the table of contents cannot be read, the disk will not be recognized. Specifically to CDRWs, a full erase deletes all data on a disk, while a quick erase removes all references to the tracks and sessions, leaving everything else unchanged. This can allow tools to read all the orphan data. So if a CDRW was quick erased, it's basically like looking at a spinning hard drive. All the data will still be there, and we can use tools to extract it. If it was a full erase, that's probably going to be harder to do. A DVD. Created by Philips, Sony, Toshiba, and Time Warner. which can hold between 4.7 gigabytes and 17 gigabytes of data. What are the two types of DVDs? And I don't mean DVD-R and DVD-RW. What's the two different types of DVDs? Any guesses to the two types of DVDs? Blu-ray is not a type of DVD. Blu-ray is its own. Not RNRW, but Peter is much closer. He has one of the two. DVD minus R. And who's the other? And the other one is the plus. What's the difference between the two? And it's fine to say no clue, by the way. It's always fine to say no clue. The difference between the two is one is proprietary to Sony. And that's the plus R. DVD plus R was the one that Sony said, this is our format. And the rest of the world looked at them and made minus R. I mean, they do have Spider-Man. And then from there we have the HD DVD who tried to go against Blu-ray but lost. Blu-ray is a single layer Blu-ray disc can hold up to 25 gigabytes with a dual layer storing 50 gigabytes. The Blue Laser, that's where the name comes from, is pretty small in comparison to HD DVD, so it's able to store more data and became the more dominant of the optical drives currently. Hey, look! It's a real-life save button! They are still around. Companies still use them. The government still uses them. Don't just beat them down because you think, oh, we live in the land of using the cloud and USB 3 and all that. They're still around. They're still being used. And again, if you are working at a company who does digital forensics for client companies, you're going to have these waiting in some closet. You're going to have these, you're going to have the writers and readers sitting ready to go. Zip drives are the higher capacity alternatives to floppies. Nonetheless, you will probably still find them around. And last is the magnetic tapes. Those still exist and can hold quite the amount of data than even a Blu-ray can handle. They are great for long-term storage. For long-time archival storage, tapes still dominate. And yes, they're used in server rooms, they're used in data centers. They do the job of being able to cheaply store terabytes and terabytes of data. So again, if your company that you're working for and you are the digital forensics expert in it, and your company doesn't have tapes or floppies, then you don't have to have one lying it just in case. But if you're a shop, then you're going to have one of everything. So you'll have quite the library of hardware and software to deal with any and every possible scenario. Any questions on our little run through hardware? Or any other questions? Because you guys have been asking some good questions today.
I had a question about the proprietary stuff. If you have an issue as an investigator, are you able to approach like the companies themselves and will they help out?
Sometimes. Sometimes they'll help out, or sometimes they'll just point you and go, here, you go get this tool and you'll be able to use it. Like, where's that picture? This one. This has a slot for Sony's proprietary card. But yeah, probably if you pay them enough, they'll be willing to help. Or throw you to something like this and go, here, use this, and good luck, stop bothering me. Other questions? Okay. This week, it looks like a lot, but don't freak out. In the autopsy overview, I have linked to videos that you'll be watching. This one. I do have some notes. Section 0 doesn't have a quiz. So these videos are all labeled by section. So yeah, so section 0 doesn't have a quiz. Section 10 has been renamed from correlation engine to central repository. So don't get confused by that when you get there. But essentially what you're doing is downloading the zip file, watching the short videos, and taking the quiz. And you have 3 attempts at each of the 15 quizzes. The videos are not long. They're between like 5 to 10 minutes. I think there's like 1 or 2 that are longer than that. But it's all about how to use autopsy. That will be the main tool that you'll be using for the rest of the course, along with all the open source tools that you got from SandSift and Kali and anywhere else that you get forensic tools. But since there is an actual training for autopsy, you'll be doing that this week. And again, as with all my assignments, it's okay that you don't get through all 15 before the next class. It's okay. They're all due September 10. So you do have some leeway time to get through. If you get stuck at any point, ask away on Discord, please. But it's pretty straightforward. Download the videos. This videos.zip. Go through the videos one at a time. Take the quiz after. If you run into any trouble, just ask away. Any questions on the work? Okay.